Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. I'm Jess Hyman with the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunities Statewide Housing Advocacy Programs. And so how many people here have heard of CVOEO? Look at that, just about everybody in the room, but not everyone, so there's some new folks. Well, CVOEO is one of the state's 5 community action agencies, and we have a whole raft of programs. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. CVOEO is one of the state's 5 community action agencies, and we have a whole bunch of programs all dedicated to racial, social, environmental, and economic justice. And so we have programs that address housing, food access, weatherization, early child care, financial capability, and a whole slew of other things. All of our, yes, thank you, Janet. It's an amazing organization. For the few of you in the room who haven't heard of CVOEO, check it out, cvoeo.org. And so it is my pleasure to be here tonight with all of you and with our amazing team at CVOEO to celebrate Fair Housing Month. And we do the series of events every year to celebrate the importance of home and community and make sure that everyone understands how important those things are and the importance of thriving, diverse, and vibrant communities. This year, Fair Housing Month feels a little more delicate for me. You know, we're facing some big changes at the federal level that are really undermining the core of our fair housing protections. Yes, boo. And meanwhile, we have laws. We have federal laws, we have state laws, and those things are still very real. And so because of that, the theme for this year's Fair Housing Month is fair housing no matter what. So no matter what's happening at the federal level, no matter the law is there. The law is there to protect all of us. And there are things that we can all do every day in our lives, in our communities, and in our state that can make a difference. So this event tonight and all of Fair Housing Month activities are made possible by an amazing group of people. First off, there's our staff at CVOEO and the Fair Housing Project team, including Kalia, who you'll hear from in just a moment, and other members of our housing advocacy programs team who are here in the room. If you're part of the HAP program, raise your hand. See some hands, wonderful. And the rest of the CVOEO staff and partners. These events couldn't be possible without our partners around the state, and we want to just express a huge amount of thanks for all the organizations on this board. I'm not going to name all of them. Some of our key sponsors for Fair Housing Month this year are Champlain Housing Trust, the Land Access and Opportunity Board, the Northwest Vermont Realtors Association, Vermont Housing Finance Agency, Let's Build Homes, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and Vermont State Housing Authority, as well as the other organizations you see here. I'd also like for us to give a big round of applause for our sponsors for this event, Main Street Landing for hosting the event, our friends at Vermont Wine Merchants and ProPig and Zero Gravity for the drinks you're enjoying, Stefano's North Country Italian Cuisine for the food, and the Land Access and Opportunity Board, which is providing stipends for our amazing storytellers, as well as 7 Days, of course. And a huge thank you tonight goes to Ferene Paris of All Heart Inspirations. Who has been nurturing these stories that you're about to hear. And the biggest thank you of all goes to our storytellers, who I'm so excited to hear from in just a few minutes. So I think I did everything I was supposed to do here. Thank you all for being here. It is my pleasure to hand this over to Kalia Livingston with the Fair Housing Project of CVOEO. Kalia.
Hi everyone, my name is Kalia Livingston. Before we pass it over to our storytellers, I just wanted to talk a little bit about fair housing and the overview of how we got to this point. The Federal Fair Housing Act was passed in, sorry, I'm getting turned up.
We had a request for more volume.
Okay. The Federal Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968 after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated by a white supremacist. Prior to this period in our country, housing discrimination and segregation was rampant, and things like blockbusting, redlining, and racist racial covenants were perfectly legal and making housing inaccessible to people who were vulnerable to discrimination. Specifically, Black and disabled Americans were disproportionately affected by these housing practices. Thankfully and unfortunately, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King created the political will for Congress to actually create policy to protect vulnerable people from housing discrimination. Unfortunately, we still see housing discrimination be a huge issue in this country, and trends that we see throughout the United States also are very prevalent in Vermont. We currently have several protected groups where it's prohibited from discriminating against them based on who they are. One huge fair housing win for us was getting immigration status and citizenship status enacted as a protected class just last year. That was implemented in July. But despite these policies, enforcement for fair housing, unfortunately, is not a priority, as Jess mentioned, from a federal level. But I have to thank our enforcement partners, the Vermont Human Rights Commission, as well as Vermont Legal Aid, who are doing endless, tireless work to support people experiencing housing discrimination. CVOEO's Fair Housing Project is part of our statewide housing advocacy programs. We support all Vermonters with services through consultations, direct service, and also make referrals for anyone who needs support that is outside of our purview. Specifically with the Fair Housing Project, people come to us who are experiencing illegal housing discrimination, and we can show up as the first line of defense and support them through our education and outreach efforts. I'm very grateful for the services that we can provide and hope to continue to educate the public on fair housing laws, including housing providers, service providers, municipal officials, through the fair housing trainings and workshops that we provide. Some of the fun things that we get to do include planning events like this, where the community can come together and network and talk and hear these wonderful storytellers that you're about to hear. And for the rest of the month, we'll have lots of fair housing related events as well, and we've also partnered with other organizations around the state to promote their housing events. You can find all of that information at fairhousingmonthvt.org and check out our event calendar. Lots of things are coming up, so please make sure to check that out and register for whatever is interesting to you. That being said, I will pass it over to Ferene and we can get started with storytelling. Thank you so much.
Hello, check, check. It is so good to actually look at the beautiful people and individuals in this space. For those who are meeting me for the first time, my name is Ferene Paris. I use she, her pronouns, and I love the power of human stories. I am from proud lineage as a daughter of Haitian immigrant parents. And in our culture, stories was the thing that no matter who you were or what status you were in the country, everyone had access to stories. Because our stories are literally located within us. And when I think about like hey, I'd love to participate in this. Like before, I didn't know how to ski. If I wanted to go skiing, I first needed to know how to ski. I needed equipment. I needed a lift ticket. I needed a ride to figure out how to get there. I needed community to be with me so I feel comfortable. That's a lot of steps to go find fulfillment that way. So sometimes I try to remind us that a heartfelt moment, a human moment, literally can happen to your left or to your right, because each of us are doing this thing called life. We're showing up just as you did today, and we are multifaceted with so many stories. And it's a fluidity of stories. I often tell people I've made love with both my demons and my angels. I have existed so proudly with my passion as well as my anger. All of it is me. There's no like, you get some of it, because that's kind of what feels comfortable today. You get all of it because that's me showing up deeply with authenticity. I was blessed to work with 8 storytellers that you're gonna hear from this evening. And when I was reached out to by Kalia and Jess, I said, you've reached me in a moment of my life that I think it was serendipitous for me to be invited to work with these storytellers. Back when I was young, I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The home that I found myself starting my memories in was about 30 plus floors. It was a brick building. You had impromptu conversations at the trash chute or waiting for an elevator. We shared laundry situations. There was a playground in between across from another 30 plus brick building. And once upon a time, when I used to describe that living situation, I would get caught up in some of the single stories we give housing. I would say, hey, I'm from Cambridge and I grew up in the projects. And for a while now, I'm flipping that because I don't know. I just said, I hung out in a building. We had a lot of floors. We kicked it at the elevator. We kicked it at the laundry chute. The neighbors were really beautiful. You could smell home cooking down the hallway. That's a beautiful narrative too. And I just named that because there is a single story about what means access, being a homeowner. And I too was someone who drank that Kool-Aid. And I'm not saying being a homeowner isn't beautiful, because I am one. I'm 12 years now. But I do acknowledge, just from my own lived experiences and what we see, that North Star isn't necessarily for everyone. There are a lot of people who don't have access to get that. So the beauty of tonight is stories of home. When you think of your story of home, does a building come to mind? Does a structure come to mind? Is it people? Is it lived experiences? I love the song called Home by Diana Ross. And it's from The Wiz, an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. And Diana Ross plays Dorothy. And when Dorothy is trying to figure out, how do I get back home? The song that Diana starts to sing, and the first line is this: when I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. Like, let that sit in you for a moment, right? Like, man, when I think of a place, when I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I love how that sunlight is coming through that heart. Like, home can feel like that feeling, that yellow, that light. Those people that let you to exist as who you are, or if you've moved away from your core person, they sit with you in the darkness and give you a lighthouse to find your way back. So tonight we will be hearing all types of stories about home. And for me, with time, I did get a home, and then I lost that home, right? And then I got another home, and right now I'm in the position of possibly losing that home. I name that because we've realized from our storytelling, sometimes when we're thinking about home, we're speaking sometimes from a place of memory. and not necessarily where we are in this moment. And so our storytellers' stories are their truths. It's not my story. It's not Kai Morris's story. It's each individual person's story. And I name that because if you can hold, this is their truth, this is their lived experience, then you can hold the words that they're using to describe their journey when it comes to home. So with that said, I would love to turn it over to our first storyteller. I am going to invite Specific to come to the podium. That actually was your first test. I didn't tell you to clap, but you knew what to do. But let's talk about this for a second. It is not easy to get up in front of a room of majority of people that you do not know and take a risk on vulnerability. But we're doing it tonight because vulnerability is deeply important. And so when our storytellers come up, make the noise until they're at the podium. When our storytellers are done, don't forget you stop and you let this room celebrate you. I'm gonna block you. And the way that we celebrate is through claps. It could be through a like, that's right. You know, there's snaps. There's all different ways culturally that we show love and affirmation for the stories. So we have Specific up here. And this is an individual that I've seen in the community, but we're coming and going. It's an event, you're going this way, I'm going that way. So when I got the chance to sit down and spend some time listening to the story, I was grateful because sometimes you know a person's name in the community, but you don't know them. And so for me, now I can be like, yeah, I know a few chapters in the story. Chapters of pride being an African Rwandan American. The lived experiences have included international humanitarian work, government sectors, but also loves for walk in nature. And he's also proud to be a non-tech that loves tech. Can anybody else relate to that? Without further ado, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I grew up in Rwanda, in the northern Rwanda, part of Rwanda, part of East African region, in a place where life was never dull, not even for a second. At 7 years old, the world felt wide, generous, and exciting. My friend and I ran barefoot through the mud, laughed under the pouring rain, disappeared for hours playing hide and seek. No one would worry about where we were. There was always someone watching, an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent just a few steps away. Family wasn't something we scheduled. It was something we lived inside. My sibling and I were never alone. We were surrounded by laughter, by noise, by people who cared without needing a reason. Looking back now, I realize that what I had wasn't just a childhood. It was a foundation, the sense of togetherness, belonging, quietly shaped who I would become today. But foundation, I would learn, can be shaken. Homes can be uprooted, and families can be separated. In the early 90s, everything changed. The Civil War didn't just disrupt our country, it unraveled our family. One by one, we were separated. The closeness that once defined my world and my home gave way to distance, uncertainty, and silence. As a child, I didn't have the language for loss, but I felt it. We were uprooted from everything we knew and forced into a life of constant movement. We went from a place to place across East Africa, searching not just for safety, but for something that felt familiar, something that felt like home. But that home never quite reappeared. The structure I had relied on, the rhythm of family, the comfort of belonging was gone. And without it, I grew up too fast. Childhood became something I carried in memory, not something I was still living. In those years, strangers became neighbors, neighbors became family, and home slowly changed its meaning. At one point, home becomes simple, a roof over my head, walls that kept the outside world away. But even then, a question followed me everywhere. The question followed me everywhere. Is this home? Can I live here? Can I belong here? New country, new school, new faces. Each time I tried to settle in, but something inside me kept comparing, measuring, and remembering. Because I knew what home used to feel like to me, it wasn't just a place, it was warmth. It was laughter echoing through shared spaces. It was safety without needing to ask for it. It was belonging without needing to prove for it. And nothing quite matched that memory. Years later, life carried me even further, from East African to America, a new chapter, a new beginning. A place many will call the land of opportunity. In many ways, Vermont has become my second home. But even now, the question hasn't left me. Maybe I was naive as a child to believe home had to feel a certain way. Or maybe I wasn't naive at all. Because today, I find myself asking harder questions. Can a place really be called home if it takes half of what you earn away? Can something built on economic gain fully become a home? Something too expensive, yet so precious, you would say. I don't have all the answers, but I'm still searching. And maybe you should too. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, specific, thank you. Yeah, we're just getting started. That's the first storyteller. The process and how we arrived here. So we got together and we did a group meeting virtually. And we just kind of had a quick moment just to get grounded. Here's how this is working. You got your paperwork in. But just give us a little snippet of what you might be talking about. And man, did those little snippets keep me like, ooh, I can't wait to start meeting with you one-on-one. Each person I was honored to work with 2 to 3 times. coming back to the story, listening. Is that what you wanted me to hear? Oh, that line. It's like a repeated lyric in my head. I deeply appreciate the narrative regarding how you and your younger self always had somebody watching. We're in a time right now where loneliness and isolation is really, really rampant. I remember in your story when you were talking about the aunties and the grandmas being just right there as you ran barefooted. I think about the village. I think about how without a village, what would that look like? You also shared about how, being that you never felt alone, laughter and noise was in abundance. Sometimes I can find myself getting lost in the scariness of my silence. Just such a beautiful reminder of the different ways that love can sound. And most importantly, for us who are responsible for raising the littles in our world, when Specific shared that though he didn't have the language to describe what was happening, but he felt it. And it's just a reminder that our youth are feeling, they're tracking, they're noticing, and it's absolutely everything to give them a voice right now. And thank you again for your words. Another round of applause. Next up is a storyteller that I was blessed to know before this journey, Cheryl Green. And Cheryl, I actually can't find your bio. I've been looking for it, but yeah, but I was blessed to visit Cheryl, who lives in co-housing. And I remember talking to her on the first call, and I was like, any chance when we do this again, can I come over? I mean, the way you're describing this, that feels like co-housing. I worked at UVM for 8 years. For the last, 15 plus years being in this community, I've heard about this magical place where Cheryl lives, but I never saw it. So to pull into this parking lot across from the UVM Medical Center and to discover 32 various types of units. We have apartments, we have 2-level condos, there's even a couple of houses. There's garden beds, we go into the lower level. Oh my gosh, there's spaces for guests to visit them. There's the common kitchen with the schedule about who's cooking when. It reminded me of my time when I worked in a residence hall. Again, I think a theme is it's not just on me to do this thing called life. It takes a village. And without further ado, Cheryl, may you please talk about your special village in the Queen City. Thank you.
Hi, Jane. Hi, Cheryl. Do you have a flashlight I could borrow? I just lost a mitten in the recycle bin. We're standing in the common kitchen. I'm just about to dump my compost into the bin. My apartment is close. I go get my phone, hand it to Jane. In 3 minutes, Jane comes back, 2 mittens. Just as I'm checking to see if I got mail. This is co-housing. We all know each other. It's easy to ask a favor, to help out, to share a surprise. Witness, offer, receive. Kindness. And sometimes there are complications. So we live pretty much on a rectangular piece of land. And here's East Avenue with the university over there. And then here's Centennial Woods. And it happens that there's this beautiful, skinny rectangle of woods just to the south of us. it came up for sale. We heard a developer wanted to put in 13 housing units with a big swath of blacktop down the middle. And that was our beloved buffer zone. What to do? Maybe we could buy it. So, how to raise $400,000 among ourselves? In Burlington Co-housing, there are some people who live check to check. That might be a paycheck, or it could be Social Security check. And then there are other people that are pretty rich, comfortable, and everything else in between. We decided that we did want to buy this land. And we agreed that each person would contribute to the $400,000. We asked Clara to take the lead. She asked each household to come to her house, her apartment, knock on the door, and tell her verbally how much we could pledge toward that money. In 2 weeks, she came back to us and said, "We have pledged $250,000. We all have to go back and dig deeper." So 2 more rounds. Clara came back and said, "We have $400,000 pledged." So, how did we do this? That's a lot of money. A little while later, we each got a single sheet. There were no names on it, but it was the financial picture of how we accomplished that. There were a few households that gave $10 a month over a number of years. And then there was one household that donated $70,000 up front. You can imagine the dance in between. We bought the land, and I remember thinking, I wish the world was watching us now. We did this with inclusivity and no judgment. And now we collectively own that wild parcel, and we tinker a little, taming it here and there from time to time. Take the blackberries. They are luscious and thriving still. And we are just about to cut back the canes from last year. You all are welcome to come pick blackberries in early August. They'll be a luscious, juicy. This is co-housing.
Thank you, Cheryl. This is co-housing. I mean, it's just like a mantra. And the way you describe co-housing is how I would describe your spirit. I met Cheryl in a retreat. Seemed like a vibe, but I was like, I don't know. More of just, I was having trust issues regarding what it meant to feel safe in this community. And then I went to a lake house party, and there was Cheryl and Peter sitting among Zariah Hightower's friends. And I was like, Z, I had a good intuition about this Cheryl. Tell me more. And since then, whether it's crossing paths in a park or even City Market in the South End, you always take a moment to witness offer, for me to receive kindness. Thank you for constantly witnessing me. That's the joy from someone from co-housing. Thank you, Cheryl. So I've had the joy of like, oh my God, this is a friend doing this. Oh, and then I've had the joy of, I've never met you in my life. And like, can we kick it tomorrow? The next queen that I'm inviting up here is Haley, who, as they make their way, we met 2 weeks ago. And if you remember like how sunflowers find the light, that's this one.
Oh, thank you.
I just, whether finding it for self to give it back to others, or whether finding it to put that oxygen mask on that we need to do. But the story that Haley is going to share with you, the shelter that she talks about in her story, is from 2015 to 2020. And then after 2020, in that year, she would purchase a condo through CHT, and it's been her magical place for her and the cat Ramona, who was on the call. It was awesome. Without further ado, Haley!
Okay, thank you. All right. Living with squirrels wasn't always so bad. Sometimes they provide comedic relief. One day I got home from work and I found that a squirrel had chewed through the plastic accordion of my window fan. It was eating an avocado on the kitchen counter. He flew out the window before I could even register what happened. I held the half-eaten avocado in my hand, wondering if I could safely eat the other side. Avocados were a rare luxury for me, but I didn't want to chance it, so I threw it away. There were other squirrels that came to visit. One would watch me through the window, providing much appreciated companionship during lockdown. Another squirrel tried to pull a whole bagel through the hole in the exterior wall. I watched as he repeatedly dropped it onto the window ledge below. But my little Sisyphus never gave up. And I think he eventually got it in there. In some ways, I learned to live with them. But late at night, when I lay in bed and I could hear them tumbling through the walls, I would imagine their tiny electrified bodies illuminated like a cartoon X-ray and start making panicked calculations about how quickly I could get out of my building and what I would grab on the way out if there were an electrical fire. My landlord and I made an agreement. He would set up a have-a-heart trap on the fire escape, and I would call and he'd send somebody to come get them. "We'll take them to Shelburne to steal from the rich," he said. But usually when I called, nobody showed up, and so I ended up letting them go. This situation eventually got worse. A hole formed in the ceiling where the nest was. After several days of frantic calls and emails, my landlord came over, punched a hole in the drywall, shoved some rat poison in, and drilled a piece of plywood over the hole. Because there was a hole in the roof, every time it rained, the water came into the wall, ran through the nest, the rat poison, and whatever else was in there over the edges of the plywood and onto the floor. My landlord said he would fix it when the weather was warm and the squirrels were outside during the day, but there was always something more urgent that he needed to do. When I told him I was going to call code enforcement, he told me it would take up more of his time but not produce any result. During this time, I called CVOEO a lot. I knew what my rights were. I'm a person who's used to standing up for myself. When I lived abroad, I had to fight with my landlords in a language I was just starting to learn. But in this situation, I found myself very vulnerable because I was only paying $800 a month in rent. which may sound like a really good deal, but that was almost half of my income at the time. Even though there's no rules against retaliation, my landlord had never raised my rent, and there was no cap on how much he could raise it. That was the other unspoken agreement that my landlord and I had. He didn't raise the rent, and I didn't make problems. As I was writing this story, I talked to my friends, my neighbors, pretty much everyone around me. I'm a chatty gal. Their stories came pouring into me. They also had squirrels, mice, bed bugs, sewage pipes that froze, toilets that wouldn't flush, multi-room apartments with only one heating unit, black mold. They also had unspoken agreements with their landlords. More and more, I saw my story not as a spotlight, but as a single point of light in a broader constellation that spreads across this city, this state, and this country. People who spend half or more of half on what they earn in exchange for what they hope will be a small slice of safety and dignity in return. Thank you.
You ran away a little quick over there. It's those peppers on your shirt. Man, there are so many different themes that we could pull apart from narratives shared in Haley's story. I want to kind of go back to Kalia inviting us to remember the Fair Housing Act. That was only 58 years ago. That's wild. It was not too long ago. And I know many people have talked about feeling the abuse of power when it possibly comes to landlords or other individuals who are trying to sell properties. And I just wanted to bring that into this room because that abuse of power doesn't always look so direct. It's said in phrases like unspoken agreements. Don't cause any trouble, I won't raise the rent. No one should be giving 40%, 50%, 60% of their income to housing. No. That goes back to the question that Specific invited us to think about. Is it home if it's costing you more than half of your income? I never even thought of doing those statistics for myself, and it's these storytellers that is let me take a moment. And when I crunched my numbers, 63% of my income is going to mortgage right now. And there's a thing that says 30% is comfortable, 40 to 50, anything over 60, absolutely not. That's really hard. And so many people are doing this hustle and this grind. And so we have to keep thinking about what else happens after you hear these stories. Because there's this word called love, and too often we're using it just as a noun. But love is an action. Bell Hooks talks about us showing up in love, not the romanticized love, but the love that exists between neighbors and peers and teammates and colleagues. That is possible. I know it's weird for me to be I have love for these storytellers, but I do. How could I not when I was invited to witness some of the most vulnerable parts of them? So what does it look like for the landlords and the other individuals who have power to do that with compassion, to do that to help access happen? It was my life's dream when I signed my name to own a home. But these days, people are buying things with cash. You don't even, the whole experience of looking up listings and going to visit, the opportunity is gone before you even email the person. So, I want to thank you, Haley, because there's a beautiful gift about being able to tell an honest story that stays in the reality of what is versus optics that we want to be in. And I thank you for how you did that with light and truth. Another round of applause for Haley. All right, how are people doing? How are we doing here? Awesome. So we have one more storyteller, and then we're going to take a quick break. Just, a one function break, whatever that means for you. I want to introduce this next person with a disclaimer. Some of these storytellers told me exactly what to say before they came up to tell their story. And Kathleen Kemp is one of those individuals. So, Kathleen Kemp describes herself. I had never heard of this word before. Sexagenitarian. Sexagenitarian. It is an individual who is of age between 60 and 69. I'm a quadratarian because I'm in my 40s. When I saw that email, I was like, what sex? What are we talking about here? Kathleen, right? Our brains start stories, and so that's why we have to do our part to ask questions, to get curious. Kathleen is a mother. Her son Nathaniel is in this building, and her daughter Evelyn is in the building. She is a grandmother. She's a queer cis woman, lover of soca and reggae. She's a guest teacher. She is a fierce. She's my friend. She is a friend to others. And lately, people call her a Mary Poppins with a twist. Let's see what we're in for from the sexitarian. Come on down, Kathleen.
Locked out. Homes. Everyone should have one before anybody gets two. That's a quote from my dad, Richard Kemp, for anyone who knew him. I grew up believing that this was so possible and that homelessness was unnecessary and cruel. Locations I've called home as a child: Bainbridge Street, Brooklyn, New York. A commune, oh no, there's a list, hold on. A commune somewhere in central Massachusetts. Long Hill Road, West Brookfield, Mass. Willis Street, New Bedford, Mass. Smith Street, Peekskill, New York. Sunset Drive, Burlington, Vermont. As a young adult, Harris Millis Hall, North Winooski Avenue, South Winooski Avenue, St. Paul Street. And as a parent, Pine Street, Fairmont Place, North Avenue, Winooski Falls Way, Red Oak Drive, Whispering Pines, Windermere Way, and a P.O. box. Home is a dwelling, that place with an address you can have printed on cute little labels and use on snail mail envelopes. A space that's all mine, mine to entertain guests in, raise and foster children in, rehome a cat to. Home is where you make love. Home is my womb. Home can be where the heart is, even when that heart gets broken in two, crushed beyond recognition. There was a time where I began wearing rose-colored glasses. They're so fun. Everything looks so nice and everything's okay. You just gotta know when to take them off before it's too late. Truth be told, I wore mine for a number of years. They became comfortable and familiar. Unfortunately, I missed way too many red flags, flashing lights, and warning signs. My intimate relationship was unraveling slowly and methodically, but I didn't see it. So I continued coordinating the efforts of the subcontractors for our home renovation, window replacements, a rebuilt fireplace, a lined chimney, a wood stove insert, and a new roof. With the interior painting complete, we purchased a new front door. As the decor improved, our relationship did not. Couples counseling was not proving to be helpful. Our therapist suggested we take some space. I spent a cooling off weekend with a friend and eventually began living there full time after a month. My world now reduced to a small bedroom with no closet or drawer space. I lived out of 2 suitcases, my office, a portable file box. The hunt for a new home was on because my name was not on the deed. During my search for a place to live, the season changed and I needed warmer clothing. My partner insisted I make an appointment to come to the house rather than drop by. So I did. Those rose-colored glasses were sitting crooked on my nose, but I didn't notice the view was askew. The new front door installation was complete. However, excuses about providing me with a key abounded. Then I realized I wasn't going to be getting a key. One day the garage door opener wouldn't work because the code had been changed. My partner wanted my remote back, so I handed it over. After all, she was the sole owner. That's the day I got locked out of my home and separated from most of my belongings. Was I homeless now? Time to remove the rose-colored glasses. Time to stay focused on finding a new place to live. And thanks to Champlain Housing Trust, I purchased a home of my own where the front door is locked and I'm on the inside. Woo! Woo!
Kathleen. So Kathleen is someone who I originally met at UVM. She was in HR. And for the times we were there, we really didn't cross paths. And then it wasn't until COVID, when I had left UVM, I crossed paths with Kathleen in a special group called Skull. And Skull, if anybody is familiar with the Vikings or Minneapolis, that is what you say at those football games, those fans. And it's like, wait a minute, how did you have all these black women rooting for the Vikings in Vermont? Like, what is the story here? And it actually connects because it's home. During COVID, former director Taisha Green and her wife Lisa had moved to this community. And they had a spot over in the new North End. They had this beautiful corner condo apartment. And there was a walking group that started for black women, and everybody was opting in. It was called the Black Femme Walking Group, and we just throw things in there to go walk because it was COVID, distance and all that stuff. But one day, we were invited to come to brunch, and we were actually going to be in person and like physically see each other and hold each other. The food was banging. It was so good. The people in the company was everything. As someone who's deeply proud of being a black woman, man, when you walk into a penthouse of 12 dope black women, I thought I could rule the world. And from that brunch, we started circling up on Sundays. Because for some people, football is church. And that's what it is for Taisha Green. And so every Sunday we'd come and the rules were simple. You love the Vikings or you shut up and just watch football. And we were fed Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. I can't help but just take a moment as we think about stories from home. Just the folks who unselfishly open up their spaces because they can. And I think a lot of us in our community could possibly open up a little bit more because we can. I'm going back to your quote, Kathleen. People having 2 homes before all of us have one, right? Like, I have friends who have 2 homes, but also I can sit with that, right? And I am just grateful for folks who understand where they are with their privilege, they do the compassionate thing and they share. And they don't sit on a mount of resources and just continue to ask more. Thank you for opening up your home. You gifted me Kaya and Zariah and Kathleen. And I want to just hold space for chosen family. Not all of us are like blessed to have blood family close, or sometimes we have to love some blood family from afar. And I'm hearing in some of these narratives, especially white co-housing, that's chosen family, right? So I'll leave you with that. Family, home, how are you really describing those words if we can think beyond the single stories we give them? We're gonna give you a break and you're gonna come back in this room. Should I give you the fake time or the real time? Like, what is this room like? Because I want, if we can commit in the seats, 7:20, all right? And then we'll be kicking it off with Courtney. All right, thank you. 7:20. All right, y'all, we have 4 more storytellers. And as I told you, once upon a time, I worked in higher ed, I worked at UVM, and I was the director of new student orientation, the director of first year experience, and I was responsible and my team of 50 student interns to welcome a new class. And during the summer, we would do session after session after session. And I'd have to keep reminding the group, even though it's session 5 for us, it's session 1 for our guest. And so, first off, thank you for the love and the energy we put into the first half. And we still have 4 more stories that we have to hold, center, and uplift. And so, whatever it is that you do to be in the space more as it's getting darker and after you've had a little bit to eat, there's a poem by this poet, Nuria Wahid. And she says, sometimes, upon hearing your story, people contract. Others, upon hearing your story, expand. And that's how you know. So I want to thank you for the expansion. And as in Cheryl's story, we got to get more expansion. We're going back. Without further ado, I want to introduce Courtney to come up to the podium. I'll give Courtney a moment to come on up. Courtney is another community member that I had the honor of meeting through this process. And when we were reflecting on the story, you know, sometimes you're like, what is it that you just want to leave people with? Or more, how do we want to be witness? Too often with storytelling, people project stories on you. And so this right here is a brilliant, dedicated single parent. She's an advocate, disability rights, a housing advocate. The passion pours out of her. And you're quite the creative soul. Courtney.
In 2016, I was a single parent receiving disability and raising a child with special needs. 60% of our income was going towards rent. There were many months when I was scared we would not be able to pay rent, where we had food insecurities, and we found ourselves very isolated. A year and a half before, I took a credit course to prove that I could live within my means and make up for a poor or rather non-existent credit report. I applied to live in co-op housing, and my child and I have been there for 10 years now. I intentionally live in a community where you get to know your neighbors, you make decisions with them regarding finances, upkeep of the property, gardening, and landscaping. We sometimes have meals together outdoors in the summer. My neighbors range in age from 19 to 75. This past year, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and my co-op, my community, showed up for me by checking in on me, sending me cards, making meals, shoveling snow off of my car, and moving it for the plow to come through. Little things like that make such a difference. Thoughtful community makes such a difference. Several years ago, there was a frigid winter storm with temperatures of negative 35 degrees. I noticed a woman sleeping under a tarp in the building behind my co-op. I feared she would not make it through the night. In the spirit and community and looking out for one another, I walked over to her and gently approached. I asked if she had a place to sleep that night, and I offered my couch. At first, she seemed shy and declined my offer. I could not leave her there, so I told her that I was legitimately concerned she would freeze to death outside, and I didn't want to find her dead body the next morning. I assured her she could have privacy, that my son and I would be upstairs, and she could leave whenever she liked. When I woke up in the morning, she was gone. The next night was the same frigid temperatures, and I found her again under a tarp. This time, she happily jumped into my car, and we went back to my home. I gave her tea and watched a smile come across her face as she played with my cats. She didn't need to say anything, and neither did I. She was safe for the night. When I was in 8th grade, I was valedictorian of my class, and I chose to write my speech about the homeless community. My mother reminded me of that recently. I currently work at Champlain Place, a low-barrier shelter for those experiencing homelessness. This is a unique job working within a unique community. After my medical leave of absence and returning to work, some guests that were there before I left gave me the warmest welcome. I realized this was another part of my community. I feel a sense of home when I go to work. There is a large homeless population in Vermont, in Burlington specifically. It is a community of people who are often passed over. It is a community of people who have hopes and dreams and who have made mistakes and keep trying. They are worthy of having a roof over their heads. No one wakes up one day and decides to become homeless. There is a myriad of reasons one could become homeless. If I didn't have stable rent through my co-op and a job with good medical leave, my son and I easily could have become homeless over this last year of medical challenges. We could have been one of those statistics. It's that easy. It is our responsibility to look at our wider community and help those who may be less fortunate than we are. Sometimes this is as simple as listening to someone or not crossing the street because you may deem someone who is homeless to be scary. In my experience, guests at my job are seeking community. They are an isolated community trying to connect with the larger community that often pushes them to the margins of society. I have found a sense of community and a sense of home working in a homeless shelter. It's another intentional community where people can access resources from a home base, including mental and medical help or treatment for substance misuse if necessary. I encourage you to look at all of our neighbors as part of our community. Reach out, see if you can volunteer time, or ask about items we may desperately need donated. There are many ways to help our community as they look for stable housing. Fair housing is a right for all of us.
Repeating for folks in the back, fair housing is for all of us. All of us. Like, we're talking about housing. That is a basic human right. When you are blessed to have a roof over your head, when you are blessed to be able to return back to the same location day after day, week after week, month after month, there is access that you start having, a community that knows you if you get sick. You know, you have consistent medical appointments that you can hold for you because maybe you're like, I now have a doctor that I can commit to seeing. Maybe you source your therapist. There's a download, and I think when I lost our home the first time, I could just see all these things that we were losing. Wait, there's no backyard. Where are we gonna play? Hold on, wait, 2-bedroom apartment? Hold on, I gotta share a bed with my sister? What? So, fair housing is for all of us. And I want to invite us to sit in a Haitian proverb. And the Haitian proverb is, "Mais un pile, chai palu." With many hands, the load is light. And when I keep hearing these stories about co-housing, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I keep coming back to not just it takes a village, but that Haitian proverb. With many hands, the load is light. And I'm deeply grateful that your community could make your time going through your healing be lighter, because moms are deserving of lightness. And baddies that dedicate their passions to this work are, deserving of being fed mind, body, and spirit. Each time that life throws something at us, it does invite us to sit in more realities. And the more realities we're sitting in, the more that consciousness of ours can exist. And that is where compassion needs to come in. My heart was on edge when you were telling the story about this individual outside. Oh my God, would I do that? But when you do the work that you do, when you've lived the life that you've lived, you weren't gonna put it down that this person didn't have a place to stay in the cold. So I thank people who can do that energy. I thank people who donate. I thank people who show up. But what is your role in fair housing for all? Question for the heart. Next storyteller is Jason. Jason, come on up. And Jason is I'm Jason, but he's not just Jason. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I had a crush in second grade called Jason. So Jason's, you just get a green light to my heart. You get a green light. But I think for us, it's just a reminder, all we need is a moment to slow down and witness, and it's wild, all the narrative that can come out. A quote that Jason wants us to sit with in this moment is, "The two most important days of your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why." Samuel Clemens. Without further ado, Jason.
Hey. June 21st, 1995, the date of my high school graduation. Mom handed me a handwritten letter while I was getting into my cap and gown. "Dear Jason, your father and I are so proud of you on this special day in your life. You are a blessing to us since the day you were born. Being older parents, it's been great watching you grow into such a wonderful young man. We are so proud of the man you've become and so grateful to God for sending us such a loving, caring son who understands that it's not what you take from this life that matters, it's what you give back that counts. May God guide you throughout your life, and always remember that in the end, only kindness matters. Mom and Dad." At the time I read those words, I had no idea they would eventually become my life's purpose. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home. I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. I was lucky enough to be born into a place just like that. My parents bought the house at 370 Marina Drive in Stratford, Connecticut, back in 1962. If you want to picture it, think of the Edward Scissorhands neighborhood. Decidedly working class, Dad was in the trades. Mom's dream job was simply to be a mom. And I say simply, but that's an understatement. She was a lioness, a fierce protector of any child who crossed her path. Our house was a sanctuary. If you were lost in the world and needed a safe place to land, you went to Marina Drive. My parents gave anyone who needed it a safe place to catch their breath and find their way. I was an oops baby, conceived at the beautiful Mount Airy Lodge in the Poconos. Mom's miracle baby. There were 12 years between me and my next sibling. Dad, having already raised 3 kids, apparently saw things differently. He went out 2 weeks later and got a vasectomy. Regardless, I was showered with love by everyone in my family. Sometimes life can turn on a dime and hand you what for me was a perfect storm of loss. In 2017, Mom and Dad were both diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's dementia. They were diagnosed 2 weeks apart. I moved back home to help take care of them. Mom passed first, and Dad, well, he died of a broken heart a year later. And as the house that had been a harbor for so many began to fade, so did I. I found myself falling down the rabbit hole of addiction. 4 years ago, I was living in a 10 by 15 shed in the backyard of that childhood home. By then, the house had been condemned. It was Christmas Eve, it was freezing, and I was completely alone. At that point, I had chosen to walk away from my family and my friends my whole life and disappear into the fog of addiction. I was at my absolute bottom. I realized then that to save my life, I had to do the one thing I was most afraid of. I had to leave. I had to leave the only place I knew as home. And I had to go find it somewhere else. Not in a place, but in a community, in connection. Because for me, connection is the direct opposite of addiction. I moved to Vermont to start my journey in recovery and to write a whole new story. I didn't have much, but I had a roof, a project-based voucher through CVOEO. It gave me a foundation I needed, a safe place to wake up and start building this new life. Through recovery, I found my purpose. I decided to spend the second half of my life doing what I could to leave this place just a little bit better off than I found it. Today, I work as a housing advocate and case manager at Bridges Recovery Shelter downtown. Every day, I get to do exactly what my parents did. I get to help people who are lost find their way to a safe place so they can start their own stories. I've learned that home isn't just a physical address, 4 walls and a roof. Home is feeling. It's a feeling that lives in each of us. It's what we give back. It's the kindness we leave in our wake. I came across that graduation letter last April while moving into my new apartment downtown. As I read those words again, I realized, much like Dorothy, I had always had the means to find my way home. I just lost my way. Mom and Dad gave me the map.
Woo! I remember as Jason started telling me his story, because I kind of I'm like, all right, what is it that you want to talk about? I'm going to listen. I'm going to write things down that catch my ear, but just speak from the soul. And I was just so humbled by our conversations. I went on a date with a friend to August 1st earlier this week, and that's a friend who has been practicing her sobriety life since 2019. And I remember when COVID started, there was a conversation like, I can't deter from my plan. And I was really invited by other individuals in the community around this theme of addiction and so forth. I mean, even I have made intentional choices to stop drinking. Today is 602 days for me. But I thanked my friend Bonnie when we met up for coffee because I said, your trust in me invited me to show up with so much profound love for Jason. Not that I know, not that I've walked it, but the way you talk about addiction is the way that I talk about my depression. Kind of getting lost and trying to figure it out. As we talked, I wanted to go to Marina Drive. And I loved how you described your mom. There are lionesses in this room right now. And so, again, the power of story. And before we transition to our next storyteller, I just want to remind us that sometimes we don't have good choices to pick from. It's like, why didn't you sometimes all the choices just suck. Sometimes you're trying to decide which is the lesser, harder choice to do. And so I hope we can create more sanctuaries for people, whether it's homes, whether it's at a table, whether it's on the field, because our community needs to be whole and held for their authentic selves. Without further ado, we are closing it down. There are 2 more individuals left. Our next storyteller is Lydia Diamond from South Burlington. But it's not South Burlington, because if you know, this queen started in Brooklyn and then came to Burlington. And we talk about
From
Brooklyn to Burlington,
baby. Oh, yeah.
I'm honored to have you as an elder in my community. There are few elders among our storytellers, and just holding space to witness the wisdom, the realness. I know you have 7 grandbabies, but I'm a pseudo one in that mix too.
I love it.
Because your love is just such a gift, Lydia. Thank you for your stories.
Good evening, everybody.
I love the Lord. I really love the Lord. You don't know what He's done for me. He gave me the victory, and I love Him. I love Him. I really love the Lord, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to shout out my good sister Ferene because she gives me hope and strength, and she lifts me up in ways that I needed even if I didn't know it. And when she said the topic for this storytelling would be home, I gave her an earful for sure. I was like, oh, that's my Brooklyn to Burlington story. Because my first thought is Brooklyn, New York, where I was born and raised. And I come from the trauma of generational homelessness. And I realized that I was homeless at the age of 10 for the first time. And we moved from 469 Putnam Avenue in Brooklyn, and we went to live in Wakanda. And I call the Buckingham Wakanda because it was all black. It was all love. You knew your neighbors knew you. It was our village. It was loving, it was kind. Everybody took care of everybody, you know? And so after that, after Wakanda, my mom moved us to Flatbush, which was different. You know, we lived at 15 Hawthorne Street, 1384 Flatbush Avenue. That's all I'm gonna do, because my mom moved every year, every 2 years after her and daddy split up. So it was a lot. It was a lot of trauma, moving all the time. So let's fast forward to 73, when we get an apartment on Lenox Road in like Crown Heights. I could be wrong, but I think that's it. We lived all over the place. What I realized is that my mom couldn't pay the rent past a year, and that's why we moved so much. Of course, in high school, they didn't teach you about redlining, you know? But let me get back to my notes. I love talking about coming from Wakanda, which is really the Buckingham Apartments in Brooklyn, because of the love in the village that I had as a young child. I didn't know we was homeless. I know we was loved, we was protected. We had the Black Panthers feeding us breakfast, walking us to school. It was joyous. Shirley Chisholm ran for president. Baby, Brooklyn was on fire back then. You know, it was beautiful, and I cherish those memories. I hold them dear, close to my heart. My kids get tired of hearing the stories, but oh well. So I want to talk about, come to Vermont. My mom had a friend, Miss Cat, who lived here. And my mom came to visit for a week. She came back to Brooklyn and said, I'm moving to Vermont. Ain't nobody pay her no mind. But she did it, you know. And at the time, Brooklyn was saturated, not just Brooklyn, but every black major city in the country was saturated with crack cocaine. And people were dying left and right. I lost myself in that addiction. And I had 4 children. And my mama took those children to protect them from the system so I could get me together. And when she came to visit Miss Cat and came back and said, I'm moving to Vermont, a year later, we was here. It was the summer of 1994. And it ain't make no sense to me because my kids loved it. And I'm like, don't get used to it. We only visiting.
But I have to admit, it was beautiful coming to Vermont, coming to Burlington. That waterfront, priceless. And to take a deep breath for the first time and feel that good, clean air, that was priceless. Now, I bitched about it being too cold, too quiet, too white, but those good memories I remember too. So 1994, we come to Vermont. 1995, I go to jail. 96, I go to jail. 97, they set me free. And to God be the glory, home was next on the list. We got an apartment, me and my children, at 82 Front Street. And it was fantastic. Big, beautiful walk-in closet, my first one. But when we moved from 82 Front Street, we was blessed to get a brand new 2 full bathroom, 3 bedroom penthouse suite at 90 Pearl Street. It was the only one. And it was beautiful. And after my daughter gave birth to my very first grandson in 2005, she moved out, got her own place. So I had to downsize from the 3 bedroom to the 2 bedroom. That's how I got to South Burlington. And I've been there ever since. My firstborn grandchild will be 21 this month. And it has been beautiful that my 7 grandbabies know Nana for one address. That's historical in my family. Yes, I'm bragging. Yay! I am bragging because, to God be the glory, I broke that generational curse. My grandchildren do not know anything about being homeless. I might tell them stories and leave little details out, make it loving and kind, you know. But to God be the glory, I am proud. I'm busy making my ancestors proud. I do not have time for messiness. I just want love and goodness. I'm so happy to be able to stand here and tell you about my home. I got grandbaby number 8 on the way. Hey, she due in July, but next month, I will be, May 2nd, I will be 63 years old. And I'm proud because I came here at the age of 31. God is amazing all the time, baby. And I want to say thank you because Burlington, Vermont, I'm coming back. I'm moving to Burlington next month. Yes, indeed, I'm moving to the Post, which is brand spanking new, across the street from Mr. Mike's. Y'all know that new building? Lydia's coming back to Burlington! I'm excited because I have a brand new handicap accessible everything apartment. And that's phenomenal. I've been on the wait list for 3 years, but we ain't gonna talk about that. But I'm thankful, I'm grateful. Thank you for listening. I love you, and ain't nothing you can do about it.
Her energy is contagious. Lydia Diamond has a talk show. Tea Talks with Lydia Diamond every 3rd Monday of the month. And this past month in March, we had the opportunity to celebrate March is Women's History Month. So we had a chance to have a bunch of amazing women in the studio. We let them tell their stories. And it's just a beautiful reminder of we need to bring people with us. You bring people with you. You do it all the time. And it's a labor of love. And I thank you. I thank you.
Victory is mine.
Yeah, it is, Queen. All right. We We got one more storyteller, but just some nuggets from your narrative. Generational homelessness. Can we, like, for real? Like, it's just, why can't my family catch a break generation after generation after generation? That's real. That's real. And the way you described, it was just nothing but love. I mean, I remember when I got to travel to Haiti for the first time, and I'm just kicking it. It was just nothing but love. Some things were like not to get, whatever, because the people, the community, that's everything. That's everything. And thank you for loving yourself so deeply, because when we love ourselves, that ripples into our ability to love through this community. So thank you. All right. We have one more storyteller. This was the first storyteller that I met with. And in the final hours of us trying to find the beautiful alignment with their story, when the story came in, I like banged the table. I was like, this is what's up. I'm so glad that I just gave the spaciousness somebody needs to do their thing. You know, sometimes your process isn't their process. And so I really enjoyed my conversation with you, Corinne, as you come on down. Has been busy working the event too, because they work for CVOEO. And so now you get to just beautifully exist. You get to hold space. You get to just pour into you. This queen found her path into CVOEO in housing advocacy. They're a maker, an artist, and they're an owner of an adorable dog named Olive.
So cute.
She's so cute. Without further ado, let's go.
Hello? It's working. Dang, I did not know I was gonna speak at the end after a whole slew of fucking poets. Like, rude. Just been weeping this whole time. Thank God I didn't wear makeup today. Like, whew, this would have been a disaster. I just got under 4 minutes, so we're really gonna make it this time. Everyone will be home soon. Okay. The first house haunts. I wonder if a house could be a mother, gentle, touch not unlike imagining streaks of wind as grand mother fingers after death. Her touch only, soft in her passing, she is a container, a holder, ever the verb, she coos displeasure on those longer winter nights and the time the hurricane came this far north. They say the first childhood haunt is a house that calls to you, and I wonder if it was always her who I missed. My first house, haunting me still to this day, is the one I lived in Brownsville, Vermont. Before Brownsville was more moves than years I had lived, but at 7 we settled. Home was the view of a Scutney mountain that I would look at from between the pine boughs of the tree I would climb. I was 11 when we lost that house. My family moved from place to place, living in strangers' homes, making our way around shelter with unfinished kitchens, sharing space with unsafe people, making do with cars falling apart, moving from place to place. In my 20s, I continued this pattern. After college, when I had a dorm room, for that first year, I learned that, well, you could fill it with snuggles and pillows and things taped to the walls. When the year ends, I would have to, again, pack it all up and move to the next place. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a license, and I didn't really have a way to make it work. So when I graduated in 2013, and I no longer had peers and classmates and their parents to carpool with, I learned very quickly to keep my life small. And I kept it small for a long time. It wasn't until I heard the story of a mentee when I did a Mercy Connections mentoring program with a person that was incarcerated.
Yes,
Great program, super cool. That I started to hear my own story, the loss of housing, how that pattern, like a cookie cutter, created the person I am today. I started advocating for affordable housing with Vermont Affordable Housing Coalition, now the Housing and Homelessness of Vermont, as an AmeriCorps member, making do with the smallest of stipends, and living off of food stamps, working at a domestic violence shelter. And I listened to the stories of residents in subsidized housing from across the state, and residents here in our neighborhood, in our community here. And I heard in their story too, the haunting of a home that they no longer had. Securing housing, an apartment that could finally have my name on after many years of barriers through my bad credit, no fault of my own, and finally working with CVOEO and local credit unions to change that. When I finally got my stable housing, I started holding on to things again. I started loosening up. I started filling my body and letting my body fill that space. I got things from my room. I put things on my wall. I had sheets on a bed which I also had. I finally got a doctor who told me I had an autoimmune condition that was going rampant, which we took care of. I finally did my taxes, also at CVOEO, after years of avoiding them. And I got to know my neighbors. I talked to them when I saw them in the morning, exchanged comments about the weather, about their kids, the green space. I finally knew my corner store owner and would make comments about the art in the space and express gratitude for the new products and make jokes and talk about block parties. In 2020, I had a friend who I met through a local budding business class, also through Mercy Connections. We went on a walk, as we did sometimes when she wasn't teaching me how to drive. She was she was the age of my mom, so she was in a different generation than me. And she asked me, hey, how would you feel about buying my house? And I laughed because how could I afford a house on a nonprofit budget after years of AmeriCorps? And she said, if you want this house, we're gonna make it work. And we did. I worked with VHFA and my partner, and we now have a home to paint and grow a garden. My first permanent home in Winooski, Vermont. Yes. Having a housing that's secure and safe, a home of your own, changes everything. It allows you to have neighbors and community. It allows you to have doctors and schools that stay consistent for your kids. Getting this house, this home in Winooski, changed everything for me. And so I continue in CVOEO to talk about the importance of housing, merging my story with all of those shared with me, like tonight. Thank you all for listening and for coming here. Thank you, Ferene. Such an incredible further of stories. Affordable housing. Woo!
And this is why my intuition told me you'd be an amazing caboose and gift us the realness and the energy and the humor as we bring our evening to a close. Current, you told me I couldn't cry. I'm just sitting here and it's just been just a gift, person after person. And the same way you reflected on that, you started working with that mentee and you're like feeling that your narratives are doing this. Like, where we started in the conversation, we just kept crossing paths. Like, we were talking about how much I loved going to college because I got my own bed, a twin bed. And then we talked about, but where does all this stuff go? Because there's no room when I go back home. When I worked in higher ed, college students really struggled with the in-between. We would go all out to give them everything for the campus to feel like home. But the reality is that there were a lot of things that they couldn't take on the Greyhound bus, or where does this stuff stay over the summer? I've had a couple of student things in my garage, right? I am so happy for you that you are a homeowner. I am so happy that someone paused you to see that this could be yours too. We talked about people not abusing power. Of course, a seller you gotta pay whatever's left, make a little something, but what does it look like when you do it with compassion? I wanna make this work. Is that a phrase we can bring into our weeks and months? I want to make this work. Again, when I said that I was so humbled to have the opportunity to be an MC and to work with individuals around their story from home, home is everything to me. I shared with you earlier, I'm a daughter of Haitian immigrants, and this country was wild for my parents to raise me in. And there were so many things that got in the way sometimes of just thriving the way that we are deserving, not surviving, but thriving. I remember when we started doing a house search. I was going into second grade. That summer, I spent the summer in Montreal with my godmother. My dad came and picked me up at the end of August to bring me home. And for me, home was Cambridge, Massachusetts. But as we're driving, I'm noticing we're not going towards signs that is Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm remembering these familiar towns, Brockton, Randolph, Avon, because wait, this was the area that my family was doing their house search in. We pull up to an address, 74 Weston Street, Brockton, Mass. And at the time, my family had 2 cars. My dad was driving one, and there was a station wagon in the driveway. The one where you sat in that trunk with no seatbelt and you just bounced all over the place. My God, I'm like, kids, you have no idea what we've been through. And I saw the station wagon in the driveway. And I'm like, yo, like, Dad, why is your car here? And he's like, oh, Ferene, as you know, we really wanted to have a home. And so remember we were looking at this one and the person said, we could have it if I gave them you and then I could take back my car for collateral. I am 6 years old. Anyone who knows me, I am anxious. I literally create stories on stories on stories. I'm like, oh my God, you're gonna trade me for a car and a house? Where am I going? And then this figure comes running out the side door and I start running away because I think they're gonna take me. It's my mom. My mom comes out of the house. And it's in that moment I realize, oh my gosh, that American dream. We have the house. I'm so grateful our family was able to find our way into a house. But the same way we romanticize love and we romanticize a lot of things in life, we romanticize housing. And what we don't do is hold the whole story. Bell Hooks said, the heart of justice is truth-telling, seeing it for what it is and not the optics. People don't talk about what folks have to do to make mortgage. People don't talk about what it's like for immigrants to figure this out in a different language. My parents tried. They tried. I was also in Catholic school with my sister. And for them, the education was more important than the mortgage. And I would come to find out that we fell behind. I felt like all of a sudden I'm being told, guess what, 2 weeks, we're moving, we're downsizing, we went bankrupt, and I'm sitting there like, when did all of this happen? Kind of going back to specifics thing about children and how we can't necessarily give it words, but damn do we feel it. I felt that grief from my parents. They worked so hard to get that American dream. And now, through no fault of their own, I mean, my dad's a cab driver. My mom works at Mass General Hospital cleaning bedrooms. Like, make those numbers work 15 years ago. It is deeply hard to hold on to a house and trying to push your kids through a private school because you're thinking that that education is their passport to the future, as Malcolm X said. My parents, I believe, chose correctly. They chose school. I mean, it was because of those experiences that I would move through my education journey, but man, it was hard. And even though I am 44 years old and I lost that house at 16, as Corinne was talking about, it haunts me. It haunts me to the point that when I was a senior and I had a job, I was saving for a down deposit. That's my truth. Because seeing my parents live check to check, seeing the emotions that come when you don't have money, seeing the struggle when people are strapping, I said, not for my family. I don't know how many 17-year-olds are holding that, but depending on what your lived experience is, that's what it is. And I just started putting away. And I'm deeply grateful for working in higher ed where I lived on campus for almost 7 years, because when you live rent-free, you get the opportunity to keep putting away. I started searching for a home, and I think it took me 1.5 years. I remember pulling up to Gray Meadow Drive. It was the 4th house we had looked at on that street. The minute I pull up, there's a basketball hoop in the driveway. At that point, we got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. Ramsey, the neighbor across the street who was this high, who's now this high in college, comes out and he's like, are y'all trying to buy this house? He goes, so this is how we do it in this neighborhood. I was like, oh, are you the mayor? He's like, so you have a swing set in that backyard? And we like use it. That house has a pool, and so does that one. And we have 4 square, trampoline down the street. And I'm like, oh my God, this is all that I ever wanted. This is all that I ever wanted, not just for myself, but for my children. We put an offer on, that house went up like on a Sunday. We put an offer on Monday. It was gone on Tuesday. I just named that because, again, it's cutthroat sometimes trying to find housing. And I have lived there since 2014. July 20th, 2014. Our daughter would turn, she would turn 1 shortly after. Her birthday party was in that kitchen. The cake was from Mirabelle's, and I went through a phase where I got a house, everybody can come through. I worked at UVM. Oh, we need a place for a staff retreat. Come to Gray Meadow. You know, my partner at the time, St. Michael's basketball coach, them boys can eat. And it was such a gift to have space for people to circle up. Like that, I mean, all the shoes this big all over in the hallway. Yo, you know, Ferene, you got any more of that chicken I can take back to campus? Yes, I do. To-go containers for all. I felt that when I secured a house, my life mission was to share it. Jason, sanctuary. The same way Marina Drive was a spot, I just wanted my friends and family and my kids to talk about Gray Meadow. We named our home the Hummingbird, our family mascot. And so there's a wooden sign that a grad student made for me to indulge me calling it the Hummingbird. And I name all of this because I'm at the risk of losing my home. Something we don't talk about is the power of where you sign your name. Kathleen, I'm thinking about your story. You lived in that house, you existed in that house, you contributed to that house, but since your name wasn't on the paper, they said it's not your house. But that's not the truth. It was your home, right? So for me, I'm really trying to wrap my head around how not to leave Burlington. And I just wanted to take a vulnerable moment because I just went through a divorce, and the house is the one thing that we can't find an agreement on. So whether is it that you pray, whether it is that you send good intentions, I can't lose my home at 44 because I lost it at 16. I'm not doing that shit again. I'm not doing that again. And so, fair housing for all, as you told us, Courtney. And so I named that because it's just a reminder that you never know to your left or your right what people are holding. I know I'm not the only one living check to check, mortgage to mortgage. And so thank you so much for this platform to share stories from home. Thank you so much to dismantle the single stories and bring in a variety of lived experiences of what it means to do this thing called life. Love is a place where love is overflowing. Storytelling cohort, we were home. Thank you so much.
Just gonna keep you for 15 more seconds. Thank you all so much. Big thanks to Ferene. I can't express enough gratitude for how amazingly you did with your emceeing and really weaving all of the stories together. Thank you to all the storytellers as well. You all filled this space with so much heart and bravery. And I'm really inspired in thinking about what my story of home is as well. Just want to wrap up by saying that this was our Fair Housing Month kickoff event, and the month continues. We have lots of other events that people can participate in, including a Know Your Rights workshop, which will be in South Burlington next Saturday. Tune in for Fair Housing Friday webinars. I'll be interviewing different professionals to talk about their intersectioning with the Vermont housing market. Those will be virtual, and you can find out all of our Fair Housing Month events at fairhousingmonthvt.org, and also check out our Thriving Communities VT social media pages as well.